expand our imagination.
Justification for being what you are.
Welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm John Dickerson. Tomorrow it's primary day again, and one of the key races being watched is the Arizona Senate race. Today, as a part of our Behind the Ballot series, we're going to talk to the challenger in that race, JD Hayworth, who hopes to retire, John McCain. Welcome, Congressman. I want to start with this was a pretty close race in the polls, but now the polls seem to have opened up a little bit. Senator McCain appears to have a lead, and I notice a headline in the Hill newspaper that says McCain poised to crush Hayworth on Tuesday. So what happened?
Well, first of all, the Hill's headline will be proven wrong tomorrow night. We are poised to pull one of the greatest upsets in political history. Now, Mr. Campaign Finance Reform, John McCain, has absolutely run away from that position. Instead of lecturing us on the evils of big money, he has spent $21 million, largely in attack ads, mischaracterizing my record. I guess if we wanted to be brutally honest about it, John McCain is using the lie and buy strategy. Lie about my record, try to buy this primary election, but tomorrow I don't believe conservatives and Republicans can be bought in the Arizona primary. I believe I will win because I'm a consistent conservative, and I don't think the voters of Arizona are prepared to accept any ridiculously expensive imitations.
I want to get to those ads in a minute, but so play the scenario out then for me. Where does the surge of support come for in the end for you?
Well, in the final analysis, conservatives who are motivated to vote will take a look at the ballot tomorrow and they'll say, gee, I could vote for John McCain, but he's double-crossed me on any number of issues. He says now he's against amnesty, but do I really want to take that chance? On the other hand, we have JD Hayworth on the ballot, and while Mr. McCain has spent $21 million pointing out so-called flaws in JD's candidacy, the fact is, whatever those so-called flaws are, I know that JD will do what he says and says what he means and will vote from a consistently conservative standpoint. And so you take a look at that, couple that with the fact that now our gubernatorial primary is uncontested. Jan Brewer, the incumbent, coasts to a win there. That actually depresses the turnout of moderate voters who might be more inclined to vote for Mr. McCain. The wind is still at my back politically, even though the spending has been overboard from the one-time leading proponent of so-called campaign finance reform.
This was supposed to be the year of the outsider. John McCain's been in Washington for a pretty long time. He's an insider, as you say. He's at odds with some in his party. But but in this race, though, being an insider doesn't seem to have hurt him.
Well, no. What he's done is he has done the cynical old Washington inside trick. John doesn't want to run on his record because it's so contrary to what conservatives want to see. So that's why you've seen him spend a record amount of money here in Arizona, $21 million, to try and change the subject, to try and make me the focus. But the bottom line, the $21 million notwithstanding, is this. John McCain can try to run from his record, but tomorrow the voters will still remember that record, and that is why I am poised to pull an upset of historic proportions here in Arizona.
Congressman, characterize for me, if you would, that anti-insider sentiment as you've experienced it in your campaigning during this campaign.
Well, the disconnection between John McCain and the voting public in Arizona can be summed up in really almost alphabetical order. A is for amnesty. McCain has tried to shove it down the throats of Americans, and particularly Arizonans, twice, an amnesty that would cost $2.6 trillion long term for retirement benefits for illegals granted citizenship. B is for the bailouts. John voted for that $700 billion for the Wall Street investment banks and another $150 billion in earmarks. C is for cap and trade. John co-authored that bill with Joe Lieberman in the last Congress. And then D is for the dollars in voters' pockets. And even in this tough time, there are more of them because I championed tax cuts in 2001 and 2003 when I was in the House and on the Ways and Means Committee, tax cuts that John McCain voted against on both occasions, calling them tax cuts for the wealthy, sounding a lot more like John Kerry than the John McCain Arizonans were used to voting for. And so you're just seeing this change from John McCain, where he lines up opposite conservative values, and $21 million or even more will not be enough to win this thing tomorrow for Mr. McCain. There's just there is a gap, a rhetorical gap as broad and deep as the Grand Canyon when it comes to Mr. McCain's record and now Mr. McCain's campaign promises.
Well, some of the 21 million is going towards ads, and particularly a pretty tough last one here. I want to show it to our viewers and then get your reaction about it.
Congressman JD Hayworth did favors for the infamous Jack Abramoff and his friends. He received $150,000 from Abramoff and his clients. John McCain exposed the Abramoff scandal. Jack went to prison. And most politicians gave back all the tainted money. But not JD. He kept the money. John McCain. Character matters.
I'm John McCain, and I approve this message.
What's your reaction to that ad?
Well, let me start with a point that I'd like to echo. Character matters, especially when the senior senator displays no character. He knows that ad is completely false, and there are so many untruths, it's tough to know where to begin. But let me just concentrate on the fact that John McCain chaired hearings in 2006 concerning Mr. Abramoff and his relationship with members of the Senate and members of the House of Representatives. My name never came up. My name was never part of any sort of report. John McCain knows that. And to run an ad that is blatantly false, I'm sorry to say this, it's part and parcel of a lie and buy strategy. Character matters, and what we are seeing is that John McCain, sadly, has lost whatever character he had. Instead of being a senior statesman who should be revered and quite frankly should be voluntarily retiring, what we are seeing from John McCain is a cynical political shapeshifter, and that is another reason Arizonans see through this disconnection and why John McCain will be retired by the voters tomorrow in an upset that will shake Washington to its very foundation.
But isn't it kind of hard to run as an outsider against an insider when you do have at least some relationship? You even mentioned your activity on the Ways and Means Committee to the way Washington works and its most inside behavior.
Well, the Ways and Means Committee, what did I do when I served on that committee? I cut taxes on Americans. We helped reinvigorate the economy in some uncertain days in 2001 and 2003. And again, my opponent voted against those tax cuts. Now he's tried to reverse himself and say those tax cuts should be extended. No, look, shapeshifter, chameleon, someone without the courage of his convictions. John McCain has just turned into another Washington politician. Sure, I served in Washington, but I've had the benefit of being back home. So I know what works, I know what doesn't, and I know the tricks and traps of what goes on the banks of the Potomac. So I will return to Washington as an older and wiser, but still as a very conservative member of the United States Senate. That's the change Arizonans want to see, the right kind of change, and it begins tomorrow with a primary upset of historic proportions.
Congressman, regardless of who wins, it doesn't seem like a unity rally with the two of you arm in arm after this primary is over is really a possibility.
Well, let me make it very clear. I will support the Republican ticket. I plan to head the Republican ticket. But John McCain, you've read the biographies. He was given the nickname in high school, McNasty, and you can see why, because of his conduct in this campaign.
Let me ask you as a final question. You've made your appeal to conservatives in the Republican Party. You've run a radio ad talking about your Christian faith and how it's so important to you. And I just want to get your reflection on this poll that came out last week that's generated a lot of comment about a number of people, 31% of Republicans indeed, who think that President Obama is a Muslim. Why do you think they think that?
Well, first of all, let me say that I believe faith is a deeply personal matter, and I take President Obama at his word. He is a professing Christian. However, when you set apart personal beliefs for the statecraft of the presidency, understand that Mr. Obama's outreach to such notorious leaders in the Muslim world as Ahmadinejad, which has been paid back by now. What is Ahmadinejad talking about? A new missile called the Ambassador of Death. That outreach in the minds of many Americans equates with appeasement. And so there may be some confusion there, but speaking for me personally, I take the president at his word. He is a professing Christian, but some of the actions he has taken, I believe, have been ill-advised in terms of outreach to the Muslim world that in the post-9/11 age, and especially in the wake of what we're seeing now out of Iran, can only be clearly defined as appeasement.
Okay. All right. JD Hayworth, thank you so much for being with us. Good luck tomorrow, and we'll talk to you afterwards, maybe.
Thank you very much.
We're now going to bring in CBS News Elections Director Anthony Salvanto to help us break down tomorrow's races in Arizona and Florida, and our White House correspondent, Mark Knoller, who joins us from Martha's Vineyard, where the president is trying to relax and stay away from the cameras. Anthony, I want to start with you in Arizona. How's that Senate race looking? Is John McCain going to survive?
It looks that way from the polls. When we circled this date on the calendar a few months back, we thought this might be a real nail-biter. But, if timing is everything in politics, John McCain had time in this case and sort of saw this coming. He ramped up spending, ramped up his advertising, and his get out the vote. And at least according to the polls leading up to this, it does look like he'll hang on.
And he appears to, it's funny thinking back to the 2000 race. McCain once pledged that he wouldn't run negative ads. He's just walloped JD Hayworth over the head with these ads, and that seems to have put a pretty big distance in the polls between the two of them.
Yeah, I think there's a number of factors here. One of them certainly is the timing. If you look back even this year to, say, the Pennsylvania race, where Joe Sistak seemed to ramp up his campaign really late and come on then, I think McCain may have taken a lesson from that and gone out early and often through the summer to try to get his message across. I think also as a longtime incumbent there, and the fact that independents can vote in this primary, he's certainly got a base there that he's been able to reach out to. So if the polls are right, then that should be reflected tomorrow, that he's been able to do that through the course of the summer.
All right, let's look at some other races in Arizona tomorrow. The governor's races, that's pretty much a foregone conclusion, right?
Yeah, probably. Obviously, Jan Brewer looks like she'll be the Republican nominee there. A lot of news coverage there, of course, surrounding the immigration law a couple of months back really put her name and probably endeared her to a great deal to the Republican base out there, certainly the conservative base. And it looks like Terry Goddard, perhaps on the Democratic side, and that should be a battle heading into November, certainly.
And the final race I want to talk about is Arizona 3. There's almost there are 10 Republicans running for the seat, including the son of former Vice President Dan Quayle. What do we know about that race? Is it possible to even know anything about a race where you have 10 candidates and it's a district like that? Is the polling reliable? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, in a lot of ways, it's not. You're one guy, one man short of a football squad there. It is a large field. You've got a lot of competition there to get candidates' name out. So name ID typically is very important. This is a Republican-leaning district. So one of the reasons so many folks are obviously looking to get into this race is that whoever comes out on top tomorrow really has a distinct advantage going into the fall. This is a district that voted for Bush in 04 and McCain, of course, in 08. So Ben Quayle is in the thick of things from what we hear. Steve Moak certainly in the thick of it there. But it should be a close one, I should think, with all those candidates, which is what you typically see in a large field.
All right, let's go all the way across the country down to Florida on the Democratic side now. The Senate race there, Kendrick Meek was running by himself for a little while, then he got a challenger. How's that going to work out, do you think, tomorrow?
Well, the polling that I've seen so far looks like Meek would hang on, maybe closely, but it does seem to suggest he has a lead there. You have the challenge for Meek, I think, to watch tomorrow is what kind of percent he can get if he does win. Is it 50%, somewhere very north of there, 60 or so? Because if you look at the three-way race that's shaping up, Charlie Crist, Marco Rubio, and let's say it is Kendrick Meek, in those initial polls, Meek has been trailing. And what he's got to do going forward is consolidate the Democratic base behind him if he's going to keep up with Charlie Crist, who's right now out in front, and Rubio, who figures to get the solid number of Republican votes as well. That battle then for the Democrats will end up Meek against Crist in a lot of ways, because Crist will certainly try to have some of that appeal as well.
Some of the latest polling has shown that Jeff Green, the man Kendrick Meek is running against, actually, that if he were to win the Democratic primary, that actually helps Crist. The feeling being that Democrats wouldn't like, or a sufficient number of Democrats wouldn't like Green, therefore would go over to Crist, and that might help him. Do you buy that? Do you think that's the way it shakes out, or is it maybe too early to tell?
Well, there's certainly been plenty of talk about that, but I think there again you're going to look at, and the political insiders there will look at the numbers after the primary. If Jeff Green wins and wins substantially and looks like he's got the backing of Democrats, and I should add there, the turnout will be a factor as well. There's 4 million odd registered Democrats in Florida. Let's see what percent of them turn out. If it's well under 1 million, then maybe that's not as indicative. But if either candidate, Green or Meek, looks like they're coming out of this with a mandate from Democrats, then that could certainly play a role in whether the National Party or other Dems turn around and back that person, or to what extent they want to spend and back that person going into the general. I mean, certainly Charlie Crist will be looking for Democratic support, if not sort of tacit support. Given that he'll look for some crossover votes there.
And one other tricky thing for Kendrick Meek is he spent a lot of money beating back this challenge, which raises issues about whether he'll have any actually to really compete thoroughly in the general. All right, let's now switch to the governor's race on the Republican side in Florida. What's happening there?
Well, there again, you've got a challenger who was up at the start, and that's Bill McCollum. He looks from the polls like he'll be able to hang on to this one, at least the early polls. But one of the things I stress again is the absentee voting here. A lot of winning in Florida depends on organization, because you've got so many. In 2008, it was up to 50% early vote and absentee vote. And that means you need a solid ground game. And there again, especially in a primary, to be able to target the voters who are especially reliable and will return their ballots. And from what we're seeing, those return ballots have been a little bit slow. Having said that, with Marco Rubio not having any competition on the Senate side from the Republicans, this McCollum race could be, in fact, the big reason for Florida's Republicans to turn out. And that seems like it could be certainly an edge for him. He's probably got the higher name ID at this point.
Okay, Anthony, thanks for giving us that update. We'll look forward to those results tomorrow. They'll be coming in quite late, but thank you. And now from Anthony's office in New York, we will switch to a windowless filing center in Martha's Vineyard, where Mark Knoller is going to join us. Hello, Mark. Tell us, what's the president up to today on his vacation?
Well, John, actually, it's not a windowless office. What you're looking at is the TV workspace. All the networks share a workspace in Martha's Vineyard, and this is where we work. There are windows in the back of the room, so it may look hermetically sealed, but it isn't. President Obama today is spending time on the rental property that he's using, the Blue Heron Farm in Chilmark here on Martha's Vineyard. It's been raining and very windy today, so it really doesn't lend itself to any outdoor activity. He may do something later in the day. Since arriving here on Thursday, he has played 2 rounds of golf. He's taken his daughters to the bookstore to get some summer reading. He's gone on a beach picnic with all the members of his family. But today, because of the bad weather, they're staying indoors. Maybe they're doing what other families do when it's bad weather on a vacation day, watching TV or playing Monopoly.
That's right, a rousing game of Monopoly with no hint of bailouts. I'm sorry about the windowless. I wanted to make it seem for viewers...
There are no bailouts in Monopoly.
I wanted to make it seem for viewers like you were there suffering, not even able to access the elements. Let me ask you about the Obama vacations. President Clinton used to go to Martha's Vineyard as well. Is this essentially the same routine, or has Obama changed it a little bit?
Well, you know what's interesting? Both President Clinton and President Obama, when they are here in Martha's Vineyard, what they love to do is play golf. They're both avid golfers. Frankly, I don't get it, but they really love the game. Since arriving here, President Obama's played twice. Last summer, during his visit here, he played 4 times, and he seems on pace to play golf at least that many times before he leaves on Sunday to go to New Orleans, where he'll be marking the 5th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina.
It may be that for a president, that a golf outing is the longest uninterrupted walk they can take outside of their own compound at the White House, and maybe he's just desperate for a stroll. Let me ask you this, Mark. You wrote about.
Well, you know what, John? Actually, they don't get to stroll that much. President Obama rides in a golf cart, and I suspect that it's one of the few occasions on which he's allowed to get behind the wheel of a vehicle and drive, and that would certainly be an appeal to me. Being able to drive a car, put your foot on the pedal. There's something very American about that. Maybe that's what the appeal of the golf is. But he plays a very leisurely game of golf between 4.5 and 5 hours. Compare that to the high-speed golf that used to be played by the first President Bush. He would finish 18 holes in about 90 minutes.
That's right. He barely got out of the cart. It was almost like a polo. What do we know about his scorekeeping habits? President Clinton famously took a few mulligans now and again.
Well, they're as close to a state secret as we can get. The White House does not reveal what score the president hit. President Clinton was very competitive. He used to tell reporters during most of his presidency that what he was aiming for was to break 80 in a round of golf, and before leaving the presidency, he claims to have done it. Now, we're not with him. We don't know how many mulligans are involved in that, but we don't know the scores that President Obama has hit, and they are not subject to the Freedom of Information Act.
And now, Mark, you wrote this week about the number of days a president takes off and the whole kind of myth of presidential vacations. Put President Obama's vacation time in some perspective for us.
Well, before I give you the numbers, let me say that vacation is not really the right word to use. There ought to be a different word. It is vacation from the White House. But a U.S. president is never really on vacation. A U.S. president, the job follows him wherever he goes. They get daily intelligence and national security briefings, even when they're on what we might call vacation. They have other responsibilities. If something happens, the military officer with the football, the nuclear launch codes, is with the president wherever he is. National security advisors come with the president and give them briefings. But with that in mind, you can say that this is the 9th vacation President Obama has taken, and he has taken, since taking office, 43 days of vacation. By the end of this trip, it will be 48. Now, I can say that President Bush, during the same period of time, he made 14 visits to his ranch in Texas, totaling all or part of 102 days. Now, you might say, well, that's a lot more vacation. It's vacation from the White House, not necessarily and definitely not vacation from the job. So he spent more time away from the White House than as President Obama, but he's president wherever he goes, and it's important to bear that in mind.
And finally, it's also not news-free. We learned recently, or today, I guess, that the president will be giving a speech about Iraq when he returns to Washington. Is that right?
That is right. The White House announced yesterday President Obama will be giving a speech next week after his return from Martha's Vineyard. It'll be a speech pegged to the August 31st date of transition, on which the U.S. military role in Iraq changes from one of combat to one of assisting and advising and training and equipping Iraqi forces. So by that date, the White House says 90,000 U.S. forces will have been withdrawn from Iraq on President Obama's watch. It'll leave 50,000 troops in Iraq. And of course, there are 100,000 American forces in Afghanistan where the war is still very much in progress.
Okay, Mark Knoller from Martha's Vineyard, thanks so much. Mr. Knoller is like the president in that he changes locations but never stops working. Thanks to all of you for watching Washington Unplugged. Join us again tomorrow right here on CBSNews.com. I'm John Dickerson. Have a great day.